Hello everyone, Keith Wintersteen with the South Dakota Department of Game Fish and Parks. On today's episode, we're going to learn one of the oldest methods of preserving wild game, smoking, specifically jerky smoking. Specifically, doing it like they originally did it, in an oven. Because if you're not cheating, you're not trying. The first thing you need to do is disinfect your hands. I'm assuming by now everyone is familiar with that technique. I am. I've used enough alcohol to disinfect the inside and the outside of an adult bull bison. So, let's get started. Before you decide that you're going to smoke, you need to lay out all of your ingredients, have your plan, and then execute your plan. So what we've done is we've taken a fairly nice cut of pronghorn antelope, trimmed all the excess fat off. Now we're ready to slice it into strips, season it, let it set overnight, 10 to 12 hours, and then slow smoke it in the oven. I'll show you a couple of shortcuts, but for the most part, you're going to want to take this recipe and make it your own. There are things you'll want to add that I don't use. There are things you're going to like that I don't like. A lot of people will use a liquid marinade, but I've always wondered, why would I drench something in liquid overnight just so I could dry it out and then dry it out some more? Why not just go with the dry rub? So that's what we're going to do today. We have our venison roast. Venison, by the way, in Europe, but we're not Europeans, refers to any cut of wild game. In the U.S., venison generally refers to deer. This happens to be pronghorn. It helps when you're slicing your jerky if you put it in the freezer for about 2 hours before you start to slice it. It firms it up a bit, makes it easier to slice. I'm just going to go old school. This I pulled out of the refrigerator about 10 minutes ago. We're going to slice it. We're going to make some jerky. You can buy machines that will slice to a uniform thickness. You can buy some manual cutting boards that will do the same thing for you. I prefer to go old school because I don't have anything like that with me right now. So we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. When you're making jerky, the grain of the meat runs between me and the camera. If this was a particularly tough cut of meat, I would cut across the grain like this so that when I bite into the jerky after it's been cured, it would easily break off. This is not a particularly tough cut of meat. This morning when I made up some jerky, put it in the oven, I realized that I had just turned the tenderloins and the backstrap of the last pronghorn I harvested into jerky. Some of you aren't going to like that. It's going to be good jerky. So for this particularly delicious cut of meat, we're going to go with the grain, and all we're going to do is simply slice it into approximately 1/4 inch strips. Then we'll lay the strips out in a glass pan. Don't use metal for this, please. Lay your strips out. Season to taste. Everyone who's ever made jerky has a secret recipe for making jerky. Mine involves the basics: salt, garlic salt, Bloody Mary mix, don't tell anybody I told you that, and pepper. The only ingredient you really have to have is salt. Salt acts as an antibacterial agent and preservative. So we're going to use a little bit of the garlic salt. Again, remember, we're seasoning this to your taste. If you make it so nobody else likes it, you get to eat it all yourself. That never works out for me. A little Bloody Mary, a little Lowry seasoned salt. If you think I've got it too salty, I don't. Really, I'm not worried. There's a lot worse things going on than having too much salt in your jerky. A little bit of pepper. Once you do one side, you can flip it over and do the other, if you like. Or you can just do the one side. Now we're going to let this sit in the refrigerator dry overnight and really let the seasoning soak in. little garlic salt. Is it uniform? No. Does it taste good? Yes. I get to make it. I get to decide how it's seasoned. That's the great thing about jerky. You get to be in control. And for those of you at home that are wondering, yes, I will go back and disinfect all of this after I'm done. So let's start up our next row. Jerky makes a great source of protein when you're out hiking, hunting, fishing. Although I recommend you don't tell anybody you haven't, because as soon as they find out you do, they're going to try and find it. Now, once I've got that initial layer laid down, I'm going to put this layer on top, because trust me when I tell you, I've got enough seasoning on there for all of these. So I'm just going to take advantage of that. Lay this out. That was the easy part. Now, as soon as we're finished with this, we'll put it in the refrigerator. Keep it cool. Let it soak up all those juices overnight. Seasoning. We're trying to get rid of the juices. Now, we'll put it in the fridge. We'll cool it overnight. We'll let the seasoning soak in. You really don't have to do that. If you need jerky now, we could take this right now and put it right in the oven, which is one of the things I like about the dry mix. Once you decide to put it in the oven, you have to make a decision as to whether or not you're going to simply lay it across the oven rack, or if you have a lot of jerky, and why wouldn't you? Because if you're going to make jerky, make a lot. One thing you can do is use toothpicks and run the toothpicks through the meat suspended like this. You can do a boatload of jerky if you use the toothpick method. If you're out of toothpicks and all you have are these wooden kebabs, you can do the exact same thing, and you can fit 6 or 8 strips of jerky on there. Put it in the oven. When you put it in the oven, before you put it in the oven, preheat the oven to 300 degrees. Put your jerky in, set your timer for 10 minutes. The purpose of this is to raise the internal temperature of this meat up to 160 degrees, which will kill off any bacterium or organisms that you don't want in your meat. Once your timer goes off and you've hit your 10-minute mark, turn the temperature down to 160, 170. Leave it in for anywhere from 3 to 6 to 8 hours, depending on how much of the moisture you want to remove and how long you want to preserve it for. How long will it be preserved for when refrigerated? I don't know, because it never lasts that long. I'm lucky if it lasts a week, because everybody in my house loves jerky, and it suddenly disappears. I think there's a ghost eating all my jerky. And that's about all there is to it. It's that simple. You can put it in a Ziploc bag. You can vacuum seal it, throw it in the freezer. It's not going to hurt it. You can pull it out as needed. If you're making an overnight trip, if you're going camping, if you have some friends over and you want a little hors d'oeuvre, take the jerky out. You can also, don't tell anybody this, but I went to college and I lived on ramen noodles. You can take this out, dice it up, cook it up with ramen noodles, and have a neat little soup. Jerky. It's what's for dinner. And now, through the magic of time-lapse photography, it's 12 hours later, 24 hours later, and our jerky is done. Just like the episode I shot with Emerald Live, it's ready to eat. Bam! Now, don't forget, don't talk with your mouth full, and be sure to line the bottom of your oven with aluminum foil, or you're going to have a big mess to clean up. That's all from here.